Hello and welcome to this special Protrade United in conjunction with Rostron Carlyle Rojas lawyers on how to ensure you get paid on time every time. It's great to have you on the session, and I know most of you are current clients of Protrade United, and some of you are part of the RCR legal community as well. So we've got a lot to get through tonight, and I really just wanted to kick off by introducing myself, John Mailer, the CEO of Protrade United, who in conjunction with Paul Rojas, who's one of the partners at RCR Lawyers, will be delivering this session. So one of the things I just wanted to sort of create the context for the session tonight is that when we come back to the topic, how to ensure you get paid on time every time, what we really believe is that it's important to surround yourself with people who are smarter than yourself. And in particular, when it comes down to sort of the nitty-gritty end of a business, and if you're wanting to grow and evolve your business, a lot of it's about managing the risk. It's a lot about managing the downside. You might have all these dreams and aspirations to grow a company that's, developing success along the way. But what I really see is what's the downfall is that people don't manage the risks. And in a lot of cases, it's ensuring that you get paid for the quality work that you do. It's interesting, last week we were in Melbourne with a group, and we visited 3 businesses in one of our road trips, and all of them have grown to be significant small businesses. And I'm talking about 40 to 50 employees, which is a good size small business. And it's interesting, they all said one of the key things is to have good people around you, have good experts that you can go to, such as your accountant, have a lawyer, that can help you and guide you through the journey. So really tonight's an opportunity for us to introduce you to Paul, who's one of the partners at RCR Lawyers, and we really believe in collaborating with experts in their field to ensure that clients of Protrade get access to the best minds and the best resources to help them make the best decision in their businesses. So welcome, Paul.
Thank you, John, and thank you to everyone who's logged on this evening to what I think would be a very interesting topic that we can discuss.
Yes, terrific. Sorry, yep, go ahead.
No, sorry, John.
I was just going to say, Paul sort of set me up a little bit earlier to say, hey, listen, we have got truckloads of content to get through, and probably just want to set up that, on the slides that we go through tonight, that take some notes as we go through, but don't feel you need to write everything down that you see, because you will get a recording and a copy of the slides over the next few days as well. So, and I was talking to Paul earlier, and he said, yes, and I'll probably just cover the key points of each slide. And then obviously we'll also give you an opportunity later on to follow up with Paul and his team if you have any key questions in specifics to your business, or maybe there's some general things we can answer over the session. So anything else you want to add, Paul, before we get underway?
No, that seems to sum it up. It's going to be quite informal. I'll just be talking through the slides, and as John mentioned, there's quite a lot of content. I'm not going to go through it in great detail, but I'm happy to answer any questions at the end or throughout if they come through.
And maybe, Paul, before we get into it, you just want to give the guys a little bit of a background on yourself and your areas of expertise.
Yeah, sure. I'm a commercial litigation lawyer, as what we call ourselves. But I have a very strong construction focus and insolvency focus. I've been on the panel for the QBCC for the last 11 years in the recovery panel, and I do all forms of construction, whether it's resi or commercial. Generally more to do with construction disputes. So if there's ever a dispute, something goes wrong, they tend to go to a construction litigation lawyer, which is the area that I cover.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And whenever I hear that word litigation, it sounds downright dirty and roll up your sleeves and hard work. So it's good to have someone like yourself. Good to have someone like yourself in your corner to back you through it as well. And interestingly enough, your time with the QBCC is so pertinent at the moment, given that the guidelines and I guess the depth that they're going into to make sure that those businesses who are QBCC registered are, financial and also in a good position.
Yeah, it's interesting times in the construction industry in general. with the BIF Act and with changes to the QBCC Act, and the QBC playing more of an integral role now in ensuring that a lot of those companies are compliant.
Yes, beautiful. Okay, well, let's get into it. Hey, let's get underway. So, listen, I'll set the agenda and then I'll hand it straight over to yourself, Paul. But the goal is to really
Sure.
share, some guidelines on how you can ensure prompt payment with your construction contracts. You know, how to protect yourself by implementing the right documentation and the power of preparation. You know, options available when you haven't been paid, and then an opportunity to ask some questions as well. So that's the rollout that we'll go through. But so let's get into you and hand it over to yourself, Paul.
Yep, thank you, John. Okay, straight into the introduction is what I like to call is the cash flow conundrum. This seems to be a big thing in construction, more than any other industry. Is you're dealing with multiple parties, large-scale developments, vested different interests involved, different parties want to get paid at different times. Cash flows play such an important role in ensuring that project is completed. Non-payment of one particular invoice could have a domino effect that could lead to some serious consequences for the project, and that is why it's such an important factor in the construction industry. And that is the reason why there was the introduction of the Building Industry Fairness Security Payments Act. It came out in 2017 as a replacement of the old BSIPA, as we used to call it, and the old Subcontract Charges Act. It's just a revamping and strengthening the fast-track adjudication system available in the construction industry.
And from what I can understand, it's a good bit of bedtime reading too.
Yeah, it's a very long piece of legislation. You might not get through it all in one night. Yeah.
But that's why it's always good to have someone in your corner as well who understands it like yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so we'll get through to the first step. So as John mentioned, I'm covering just five simple steps, and that you should try to adopt for your own business to help ensure that you can tackle those invoices when they're not getting paid. The first one being very basic, as simple as it sounds. You'd be surprised how often this comes up. Details for payment being clear from the outset. If you whether you have an agreement in place, no matter how large the project, those little things are very important, and making sure that both parties understand how each party is going to pay the other party is a very important factor that you need to have included in your contract. Specifically there, I'll just run through those 5 points there. How you're going to invoice each other. How's it going to be sent out? Method of communication, method of payments, bank accounts. Who is the payer and who is the payee. Those things need to be clear. Some practical steps. It does happen quite a lot. In particular circumstances throughout a project, you might have a outgoing builder that can't finish the project. An incoming builder comes in. You might have a tripartite deal between everyone to get the project finished. But the little things about not changing the bank details on the progress claim, those little things can lead to non-payment, and it's something that can be easily avoided by making sure that you've got your paperwork in check.
Yeah, it's interesting on this one, Paul, because a lot of the older people in the industry have done a lot of business on the old handshake, and and they actually get confronted about how. If I go to my existing relationship and say, listen, we're now going to put some contracts in place, they have a concern or a fear that they're going to be offended that the fact that, hey, don't you trust me? And really, it's about protecting both parties as well, isn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly, and that kind of leads us to the next slide there, John, about the old handshake. That still happens, not as often as it used to in the construction industry, but unfortunately these days, whether you're a contractor or a subcontractor, everyone's getting a bit more savvier in terms of the law, and the circumstances where you might have an old handshake done. If there is a dispute, you're going to be in a far better position to protect yourself if you have a contract in place with the right terms and conditions that are there to protect yourself and your business.
Yep.
And that's what we're covering. And the step 2 is, in circumstances where you need to take an avenue to recover your unpaid invoice. I've just listed 4 there in a slide. There are others, but I just got to cover the 4.
Yep.
If you are going to choose a particular avenue, know the avenue, know the process, understand it, and know how you have to proceed with that avenue to recover it. So whether you go down a path for an adjudication application under the BIF Act, or you get a path of a subcontractor's charge, or a claim in court, or an application QCAT, understand what are the benefits of taking that avenue, know how to do it, and know the process.
Yep, very, very important. And I guess, again, not guessing or leaving it to the last minute until the relationship's gone completely pear-shaped. It's being on the front foot.
Yeah, and exactly, and that just a couple of the practical steps which I'll just list there is a classic one is know the value of your claim. It's a big thing. If you need to understand and work out what it is you're trying to recover, and that could play a very important part in terms of which avenue you may want to choose, depending on the value of your claim.
And just on a point there, because I know when you've spoken to some of our groups in person about the subcontractors charge, and how when you've got larger organisations that for whatever reason become insolvent, or they go into liquidation, how as a subcontractor, because this is where a lot of the smaller businesses get really burnt. What can you just probably delve into that a little bit more about what is possible for the people who have been subcontractors?
Yeah, sure, John. I cover this a little bit later on, but I'm happy to just go through it now. What I always recommend for clients who are subcontractors, and this only works in circumstances where you may be, you might hear rumors that your contractor, the building company you're dealing with, may have some serious cash flow issues. So you put yourself in a situation, if the construction company goes into liquidation, you're going to be left with very little. You're going to be an unsecured creditor, and you'll be in the pool of all the unsecured creditors dealing with a liquidator. So, I mean, this piece of legislation has been around since 1975. It's been used more and more these days as a very effective tool. And now obviously legislation has been repealed because we've got the BIF Act, but the whole Subcontractor Charges Act is now a chapter in the BIF Act. And effectively what a subcontractor can do is that they can issue a notice of claim. They issue a notice of claim exactly as they're doing an invoice, but they follow the process and doing a notice of claim on the building company, but they'll also do one on the building company's client. So to do one on the developer, they can also do what's called a leapfrog and do a notice of claim on the principal, which would be the developer's client. So any money that is owed by the developer to the building company, or by the principal to the developer, if it's served within the right time, it can capture those funds going to the building company, and they'll put a charge on those funds. So those funds will then be deposited into court, and then the subcontractor has comfort knowing that if they're going to have a fight with the building company in terms of getting paid, at least they know the money is sitting in court, rather than dealing with a building company that's in liquidation.
Yeah. Great. Apologies for jumping the gun there. I know that there's been one about what we've been doing with some of our clients and in our sessions as well.
Yeah, I should add though, and it's something I always talk to subcontractors about, is you wouldn't use it on every single project you do, because if you're serving a subcontractor's charge on your client and your client's client and your client's client every single time, chances are is that your client's not going to use you for the next project. So that's more of a commercial decision that you need to make. As legally, it's a great tool to use, but only use it in those circumstances where you have some concerns that that company may have some serious cash flow issues.
Yeah, great points there. So we move on. Are you ready for the next one?
Let's go to step 3. Well, this pretty much covers what we just spoke about just before, John, about the subcontractor's charge. So, if you have any suspicion that you're dealing with a building company that some serious cash flow issues, well then If you're a subcontractor, know that there is this mechanism in place. It's very effective. Use it, and put yourself in a better position to recover your money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any, mate, and probably putting you on the spot here, but examples of where this has worked in some of the cases that you've been involved with over the years?
I have done numerous cases in the past where a large building company goes in liquidation, and we've just done it at the right time. Mm-hmm. And generally you'd always get, everyone will do a notice of claim on the building company and the developer, but doing the leapfrog is a really smart way to do it, because a lot of times the developer will say to everyone who gets served with a notice of claim is that, well, the developer is going to sit back and go, well, I have an offsetting claim. The builder hasn't finished the job, therefore I'm entitled to claim for damages and liquidated damages and finding out the builder to finish the job. So all those subbies who've served that notice of claim on the developer will be left with empty-handed. But doing the leapfrog, you go into the principal. The principal will not necessarily have that particular offsetting claim against the building company. So it's just that extra step to take to put yourself in a better position.
And I can share, unfortunately, a story where we had a client who had an air conditioning company and was doing some commercial work, and the situation happened, yes, when the developer didn't pass on funds to the builder needed to put the company in liquidation, and all of the subcontractors to that builder ended up, being owed hundreds of thousands of dollars. And in this situation, we had this gentleman was a small business. He had 2 or 3 employees, very good at what he did, and he had a small family as well. And so he was owed, I think, in the end, about $280,000. And this was, a significant amount of money for someone who has a small business like that. And he ended up having to put his own company into liquidation, and we go back to being an employee. But it caused a lot of stress and a lot of, challenges behind the scenes, and that could have been avoided potentially if something had been put in place.
Yeah, that's exactly there, John. The domino effect that I was talking about before is that one company with cash flow issues can have some serious consequences to a whole number of other companies down the chain because they're relying on that payment.
Yes, yep, and often things out of your control too. So
yeah, exactly.
All right. So we move on to number 4.
So step 4. Yeah. Okay, so step 4 is, as I said at the beginning of the introduction, about how cash flow is so crucial in construction, in a project. Equally as crucial is time frames. Everyone is working to reach practical completion. You reach practical completion, your contract is finished, you get paid, everyone's happy. So to reach that practical completion, you have to complete within that time period. Therefore, timeframes throughout the project and throughout your contract are very important, as you missing a particular date can have some serious consequences. And that's why it's so important in knowing your timeframes in your particular project. If you for whatever reason, if you're going to do an extension of time claim, do it within the time. Variation notices need to be done within time. Payment or progress claims need to be done within time. Serving a payment schedule, they all have to be done within a certain period of times of the contract. Missing that date can have, the effect of not being able to claim for that particular progress claim, or not be able to claim for that particular EOT claim or variation notice simply because you're out of time.
Yeah. So what are the key steps that then people can take? Yeah.
Key steps is knowing the timeframes in the legislation, in the BIF Act, and knowing the timeframes in your contract. Every contract has different timeframes. So depending on what contract you're using, knowing those timeframes, having a calendar, putting it forward is a very useful tool to have, and making sure you're following it each month.
Yeah, and
you can see this in the slide there. I've got a lot of the dates and everything else. I won't go through it in great detail, but there are some specific dates in the BIF Act that if you're involved, whether you're a commercial builder, you might even be a resi builder, but you might not necessarily deal with like for example, a mum and dad as a client, then those circumstances, BIF Act doesn't apply, but you might be a resi builder that deals for a small developer, or someone who does these constructions for profits. Well, in those circumstances, BIF Act will apply. So you need to know those timeframes.
And generally, is there a financial or a project size where that BIF Act comes into place, particularly in the residential space? Like if you're working with a developer. Yeah, so if you're working with a developer who might be doing, a dozen units, for example, and even though it's a residential space, it is a commercial contract.
Yeah, if you're working with a developer and the works are being carried out, for profit, as I want to say, it's a commercial enterprise. Although you might be doing a whole bunch of townhouses, the BIF Act will still apply. John, you and I have spoken before about project bank accounts. They're still not in place at the moment. I think what you're touching on there is, project bank accounts will only kick in if it's after over $1 million.
Correct.
In those circumstances as well, if you're working for a developer, it might be a small developer who's only doing 2 townhouses, but the contract price for one might be $650 for the other. Combine them both together, you're over the $1 million there already.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, so we move on to step 5. We're up to now. Okay, so suspending the work under the contract or under the BIF Act. This is a very practical step that you should know and you should use when you can. I always get clients coming to see me. They complain they're not getting paid under the contract, but they're still carrying out the works. You're carrying out the works because they're concerned that, if they suspend the works or terminate the contract, that they might be out for damages, which is true. If you unlawfully suspend the works or unlawfully terminate the contract, you may be in breach of contract yourself and you may be up for damages. But if you know how to do it and you do it properly, you can properly suspend the works. And what I always say to clients is that if you're dealing with someone who's not paid your progress claim 2, chances are they're not going to pay a progress claim 7 either. So rather than put yourself in a situation where you've carried the workload all the way through to have an argument at the very end, learn how to suspend the works properly under the contract and the BIF Act at the beginning, get paid, resolve the issue, move on with the project.
Yeah, I can share a story of a plumber who was being subcontracted to do a large residential unit development on the Gold Coast, and the exact thing happened, Paul, where he wasn't paid his progress claims, yet because for whatever reasons he felt obliged to keep the work going and kept putting 2 guys on site every day. And I recommended, hey, listen, you're crazy because there's no guarantee you're going to get paid. And the famous last words, he'll be good for it. He'll be good for it. I've heard that too many times with situations ending in tears. So this is where this would apply particularly, wouldn't it?
Yeah, very useful in those circumstances. And then it's the more and more you carry the works and not getting paid, the more and more you're incurring, and you're carrying those resources yourself. And then you're more heavily invested in that particular project because you're not getting paid. So having this mechanism in place and using it is, it frees up your cash flow to be able to get them to pay you and then move forward with the project. Very useful.
Yeah, I see you've got some practical steps there to go through that clients can take.
Yep. All right, shall we move on to the next part of the power presentation? The right paperwork, the right contracts, the right forms in place are there to protect yourself and your business. We'll jump onto the next slide, John, and this is what we were talking about before about the old handshake deal. That's still around these days, but having a contract in place is gonna better protect yourself in those circumstances where there is a dispute. Otherwise, if you simply have an old agreement with a handshake, if there ever is a dispute as to how much you should be paid or whether there's any issues at all, it's going to be a matter of he said this and he said that. And you want to avoid that by having a contract in place with the terms and conditions that you can rely upon in circumstances where there is a dispute.
Yes.
So I've just got I've listed a whole bunch of different types there are. AS contracts, the ones that are used more often than not. You also have the industry standard contracts, the master builders, HIA. You can also have bespoke contracts, is what we call it. Like, you customize a contract to suit yourself.
Yes.
But having a contract in place is essential to protect yourself in those circumstances.
And let me know if you're going to touch on it later, because we can wait till then. But how possible is it for business owners to be able to amend some of those contracts if and particularly if there's an agreement in, both parties are in agreement to be not necessarily more favourable, but more realistic for the relationship that they're entering into?
Yeah, that happens quite often in amending a contract. For example, an AS contract, there are standard terms and conditions, but the parties can, they're generally in the special conditions part, make amendments. If you're dealing with a large project, you're going to get one lawyer who's going to chop and change the whole thing, and then the other lawyer is going to chop and change it even more, and then the contract is practically a whole new different version of a contract. That happens, but you generally would make amendments to protect yourself and to protect your business, and likewise the other side will be doing the same thing as well. So it's just finding that happy medium that you can both work with each other, at the same time knowing that you're protected.
Yes, great. So we'll leave you with all those numbers and letters, because that's your area of expertise, and probably not for anybody on the session to understand.
Yep, that just gives some examples of contract, but we can jump on to the next slide. So as equally as important as having the right contract in place is you need to have those right forms and procedures that you use in every project. Okay, whether you're a subcontractor or a contractor or a small builder or a trades or whatever, having those forms you're going to use day to day is very important to be able to have the right templates in place. And what I say by that is that every project you should start with a contract and your suite of documents. You have a pack for everything that you're going to use for that particular project. So if you're going to be making an EOT claim, have the template for the EOT claim. If you're going to be doing a variation, it happens a lot. They ask you on site, can you do this, this, and this, and it's not part of the project. It's not part of the original scope of works. Well, in effect, that's a variation. Have a short variation request that you can quickly get whoever it is that's asked you, whether it's the superintendent, whoever has asked you or directed you to do that, to sign off on it. Those forms are crucial when it gets to a point of any issues in terms of payment.
Yep, absolutely. And any workshop practical steps there that you wanted to cover off on there?
Yeah, so just as I said, having a suite of the forms and documents suitable for each type of project, a record maintenance system. Make sure you record everything that you're going through. You're saving your EOT claims. Proper numbering and dating on your forms again is very important. Something as little as copy and pasting to the next progress claim can have some serious consequences because you've got the wrong numbering on there or the wrong dates. You put the wrong date on there, well, then it's incorrect reference date. You won't be able to use that progress claim. You're going to have to wait again for the next month. Yeah. So small things to be mindful of.
And when you're a small business, 30 days is a bloody long time.
Long time, that's
when
right.
You've got cash flow challenges.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. I'm going to move on to the next one now. So this is something that not all contracts have it, but most of them do, and you should be thinking about this. In the perfect world, you have a contract which, say for argument's sake, commencement date is 18 September 2019, and it says practical completion date will be 6 months from commencement date. And in the perfect world, you'd actually finish within time, and everything would be fine. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. There are always going to be unforeseen circumstances. Whether you might have a week of bad weather, or you might have you know, your supplier is late and you're not getting the materials in time, or you might have ordered some windows and doors and they're defective or the wrong size. Those things are outside of your control. So having the right to claim for an extension of time under your contract is very important for yourself, because if you're late on practical completion, generally you're going to be up for liquidated damages clause, and they'll be chewing into your profits. So understand how to make an EOT claim, understand how it works and how to ensure that it's in your contract. And at the same time, the next one is the acceleration costs. If you're being put the pressure on to reach practical completion early, meaning that you have to put on more man hours or do longer hours and everything else, well then have that mechanism in your contract to be able to claim for those acceleration costs.
And that's something that, yeah, you know, there has been delays, but yet the builder or whoever is at the top end is putting the hammer down to force things to happen. And how do then you manage that and deal with that?
Exactly. Like there may be delays outside your control, and you're dealing with the client that simply says, "Well, I don't care. I still want you to reach that date on time." So then, how do you deal with that, and how do you ensure that you get paid for the extra hours you have to do to reach that practical completion?
Yep. Cool. And any practical steps there that you wanted to sort of elaborate on?
Yeah, okay, so practical steps, you know, as outlined there, agree on the commencement dates, you know, have any EOT claims been agreed or disputed, you know, if you're using a construction program, understand how it works and use it to your benefit. You know, making sure that everyone understands when is practical completion is a big thing. You know, a miscommunication, misunderstanding as to when practical completion is can have some serious consequences in terms of your profit margin. And updating the program when an EOT claim has been approved. Know the legislation as well.
Yep, or have someone who knows the legislation in your business as well or close to you.
Yeah.
Yep, excellent. And
okay, we can move.
Just a reminder, probably for everybody who's on the session, if you have any questions along the way, just type them into the question section, and if we can answer them along the way, we will. If not, we'll hold them off until the end as well, because you may have something that could be pertinent to your situation, a previous experience, or a current experience that you're going through.
Yep. Okay, so next one is something that a lot of people don't think about, but it is so important when it comes down to there actually being a dispute in terms of payment, is keeping and maintaining accurate operational documents and records. So, it's what I like to call them the source documents. You know, it's the timesheets, the logbooks, the invoices, the dockets, the ledgers, you know, inventory. These source documents, this is your evidence that you're going to rely upon if there is a dispute. You know, just say for argument's sake, you've put in a few progress claims and you're owed about $45,000, and there is a dispute in terms of how many guys you had on the site. You have to go back and rely on your timesheets and your logbooks to be able to prove the number of hours you're claiming. So that's the evidence that you need to prove your claim. Very important to keep track of all these documents, have them in a safe place, and use them if and when required.
It's interesting, you know, as the projects get bigger, and again, as a lot of the smaller businesses say, yeah, I'd love to grow, but you know, these are the types of things they need to consider and keep in the background there. It is getting very complex and sometimes confusing, but you only need one job to go pear-shaped, and you haven't got the evidence, and you've got nothing to substantiate your claim.
Oh, exactly, John. I always get clients that you know they get burnt once, and then they learn, and then they come to me and they say, Paul, okay, well, what do I need to make sure that this doesn't happen again?
Yep.
And that's just what you have to be mindful of is you know, although it's more time consuming and it's going to be more onerous on your business to have all these logbooks and timesheets, everything else, it serves a purpose, and it's there to help you if and when required.
Yep. Beautiful.
All right, so practical steps, diarising the time frames.
Jumped ahead too quickly there. Yep, diarise there.
Yeah, diary time frames, you know, keeping records of any stat decks you've got, and writing is a key. Like it's having those documents there, have it documented in writing. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, this one's fairly straightforward. I won't go into much detail with it all, but it goes back to just having the right paperwork. So, you know, if you're going to do a subcontractor's charge, you can get the template. You can get that, you know, if you're going to do adjudication application, you can get the template for that, you know where to get it, or have a lawyer, you know, depending on the size of your business. You know, if you're a contractor, you know, these days with the BIF Act, the changes that were introduced with the BIF Act, having an invoice can be regarded as a payment claim. So therefore, if you're a contractor and for whatever reason, if you dispute that particular invoice, you're going to have to put in a payment schedule. And in that payment schedule, you're going to have to raise all the reasons as to why you're not going to pay. Because if you don't do that, and then an adjudication application is on the way, you're not going to be able to raise anything in adjudication response. So the templates for payment schedules are very important, or having a lawyer in place to be able to know your project and be able to address that payment schedule very quickly.
Yeah, super important. And then the practical steps there. Are you happy with that? Because I've just got a question that's come through actually from Lewis, just back to the EOT claims. He says, is a notification of delay required before submitting a formal EOT claim?
Yeah, most contracts, yes. So you're doing it as soon as you know that there's going to be a delay, you issue the notification of delay.
Yes.
And then once you work out how many days are you going to be late by, or where you got a better understanding, then you do the EOT claim. So very important. As soon as you know that there will be a delay, you issue notification of delay.
Yeah, and listen, I know it's residential, but we're building a house at the moment, and we had some weather delays earlier on. And the builder, you know, did exactly that. Straight up front, he said, "Listen, we're just going to notify you that there's going to be a delay," and then he put in the formal EOT as well. So tick the boxes.
Yeah, well, whether exactly, John, whether it's residential or commercial, it's an EOT claim can be claimed. It's very important that you do that notification as soon as you know that there will be a delay.
Yep, great. There's a couple more questions that come through, but we might leave those to the end because I could see how they can relate to a lot of the businesses are on the call. So next.
Okay, we'll jump on to the next part then.
Yep.
So this is the part 3 of our webinar we're talking about is steps you can take to tackle unpaid invoices. Now, so I've gone straight to the recovery phase here, so road to recovery. So I've you know, you can always do a letter of demand. Everything else. Once you've sent a couple of letters of demand and not responding, or they're not paying you, or there's a dispute, well then you need to decide, you know, do you go down the path of recovery? These are the main 5, and I'm just going to give a brief overview of each of them. You know, some have the benefits, you know, some are you know, quicker than others, you know, but they're all used for different reasons. So we'll jump straight into it, John. The first one.
Yep. But actually, sorry to interrupt, Paul, because I know we've got clients from all around the country on the call that in here it's got relationship to QCAT and QBCC. But obviously, if you're in Victoria, that's VCAT and the VBA or whatever the governing body is down there.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So you got VCAT or NCAT, New South Wales. Yeah. Okay. So adjudication. Again, if there are those listening that are in another state, whilst we have the BIF Act here, you do have some kind of security of payment legislation in every state in Australia. And they all have the same, well, they might be a little bit different, but they all have the same principle in mind, which is a fast track adjudication system. So the positives with the adjudication application is that, you know, we might go to court, you might have a decision in 6 to 12 months or even longer. With an adjudication application, if it's done properly, you can have a decision in a matter of months. You know, the rules of evidence are not present. I guess some of the downsides to it is that, you know, the adjudicators don't always get it right, and because it's all done with a very short period of time, adjudicator has only a number of days to make a decision and to draft a decision, going purely on what's before him or her. So, the adjudication application, the submissions, the stat decks, and adjudication responses stat decks. It is a very useful tool to use, but if you are claiming, for example, avenues outside the contract, for example, like a quantum merit claim or a damages claim or anything else, this is not the right tool for you. It's only if you're looking at claiming what you're entitled to under the contract on a particular progress claim.
Terrific.
And the next one we've got is a notice of claim, so subcontractor's charge. I covered that a little bit before in a bit of detail. Positives is that it's easy to use, it's fairly straightforward, so you know how to use it properly. It's very effective tool to use. The downsides to it is that similar to the adjudication application, you're only going to be able to recover what you're entitled to in that particular invoice. If you have claims for quantum merit or damages, well, again, you're not going to be able to recover that or you're not going to be able to capture that in a subcontractor's charge. But if you're simply looking to recover what you're entitled to on the invoice, yes, very effective tool.
Terrific.
Okay, the third one, I guess, is my favorite because I am a litigation lawyer, is going to court. Positives is that you get finality in the dispute, and as I mentioned, the last two, the downsides is that the positives for in court is that if you have a quantum merit claim, basically what I mean by quantum merit claim is that you might not be entitled to something under the contract, but in a quantum merit claim, if you can prove it, you're entitled to your reasonable costs in what you have incurred for that particular project. So if you have a dispute under the contract, you've carried out all this works, you can proceed with a quantum merit claim in court to recover your reasonable costs in what you have incurred in carrying out those works. Also, a damages claim, which you can recover in court, which is unavailable in other avenues. I guess the biggest downside for court is that it's the unknown. People don't understand it. They feel uncomfortable going to courts. It is a longer process, but simply just because you go to court and file a claim in court and they put in a defense, it doesn't mean that you have to be waiting 18 months before a decision. 9 times out of 10 matters, they settle. So filing a claim in court can prompt the other side to have a quick without prejudice conference. Those are things that you should be mindful of.
Yep.
QCAT application, which is the next one on the list. So NCAT or VCAT for those other jurisdictions. The positive is that it's more of an informal process. You're not in court, you're dealing with a tribunal. The rules of evidence don't apply. It's a quicker process. I guess the negatives is that, again, members don't always get it right because they're not magistrates, not judges. And if you're dealing with a small claim, I would recommend QCAT. But if you're dealing with a very large claim, you necessarily wouldn't want to be dealing with a tribunal because there's no cost jurisdiction. You have to first of all get leave to be legally represented, and then you have to get leave to get your costs. All right, and the final one that I've got is what we call the money's owed complaint. So basically, if someone with a QBC license owes you money for unpaid invoice, you can make a lodge complaint with them. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. It can be effective. The downside to it is if that person who has a complaint lodged against him or the company or whatever, if they confirm that there's a dispute in relation to that invoice, well, then that's as far as it goes.
And
okay, moving on, John.
I was just going to ask.
Sorry, John.
Yeah, in the QBCC, for those people going down that path, particularly because you're limited to the amount that you can actually claim, do you find that it's probably more beneficial to, depending on the size of the claim, to get at least some simple legal guidance on that? Because a lot of people say it's only QBCC, I'm going to deal with it myself. Or, should I get someone to represent me based on, that claim, even if it's only a small amount?
Well, if it's only a small amount, I guess it's knowing and understanding how it works is always useful, regardless if it's a small amount or a large amount. So a lot of, for example, if you're going to do a claim in QCAT, a lot of times I draft the applications for the client, and then the client files the application in QCAT and run it themselves.
Good one.
But they still call me, they still call the lawyers for advice on how to do each step, but they're doing it themselves.
Yeah.
So a lot of clients feel more comfortable doing it that way as well. They'd rather go to a lot of the smaller claims. There is the emotional dispute in relation to it all, so they want to go to a compulsory conference and have an argument with the other side in relation to it all. And sometimes those small matters, it's best them to argue between themselves with a member and keeping the lawyers out of it.
Yep.
But still, before that compulsory conference, they're still talking to me. I'm still prepping them of what they should say, what needs to be done, and they're still getting that advice to be able to go in there with a confidence, knowing the law and knowing where to stand.
Yep. Excellent.
Yeah, so I think we agreed, John, the last part, it was more of like an informal chat about tackling unpaid invoices or answer any questions that anyone may have.
Yeah, certainly. Listen, I've got one here, and the question has come up, if I can. It says, what would you suggest if a client agrees to a variation in writing by text, and then at the end wants a reduction for every little item, for example, linear meters of material used? HIA says go through QCAT. When you've got these days with multiple mediums of communication, you've got verbal, you've got SMS, you've got email, and then obviously, signed variation documents. Where would you stand in possibly something like that?
Well, depending on the contract, I assume it's a HIA contract, but generally it's a variation needs to be approved in writing. So so then it comes down to the question is, what does approved in writing mean? If you have a text message, is that enough? I guess it's when did you send that text message? Did you send it at a time that you're seeking the variation? So did you comply with the contract by putting that variation notice within time? And then did that person reply confirming to that text message? And again, it's what we said at the beginning was that, is that the method of communication? And that really depends on what it says in the contract. Invoices, for example, now these days, because everything's by email, most of the contracts, method of communication for invoices can be electronically. Back 5 years ago, everything was sent by fax. So so really, it's hard to answer the question without knowing and seeing the contract. But at least you're in a better position because you've got that confirmed in writing in a text message. Then, for example, in another situation where they confirmed you orally and then went back on their word.
Yes, and I guess these days, because SMSs or texts can be,
it's still evidence. It's still evidence in writing. So, it's a better position than just having an oral conversation.
Yes, and Daniel's backed it up by saying written variation was detailed and he sent text for confirmation. So yeah, an interesting situation. Again, I know my own personal experience right now is every variation, the builder is making sure that we've actually got a signature on it. So it's every variation is documented, and they've got the templates, just like you said before. They've just got the template set up, which you provide for provide for clients. He's just got to enter in the details, send it through, we print it off, sign it, and send it back. And yes, it takes a bit longer, but at least he's got everything in writing. At least we know what we've agreed to as well.
Yeah, and you know what you agreed to. He understands what the variation is, and he's got to sign and confirm. So for Daniel to ask that question, moving forward, he might want to have a variation notice. Would put himself in a better position. But if he's put one forward and he's got the text message, I think the question that John, you said at the beginning was that whether he should go to QCAT. I guess it depends on the size of the claimed amount in dispute, but that's definitely an avenue available for him.
Yeah. And listen, we've got time for just one more question that's here, and I'm going to share with everybody an opportunity to catch up with Paul and his team if you have any more specific questions, and also get sort of an overview of your current scenario. But the question here is, how do you get a builder to agree to accept the PPSR registration to protect against liquidator using clawback provisions? or can you just attach an annexure?
Sorry, John, can you just repeat that question again? So how to get a builder to...
You agree to the PPSR to protect
Yep.
against, a liquidator coming down to claw back, provisions. Can you attach that as an annexure? So that could be more of a specific question, maybe.
I'm assuming that the person asking the question may be a supplier.
Yes.
Generally you have a PPSR, clauses in your terms and conditions if you're a supplier. Like if you're supplying, for example, air conditioning and you're installing all your equipment on there, and then if the company goes in liquidation, well, then you want to be able to make sure that you're a secure creditor in terms of what assets you put forward. So I guess it, how do you make the builder do it? Unfortunately, there's no legal advice you can give on that. As a lawyer, I would say make sure that you insist that they sign it. But again, it comes down to the commercial reality of business. A builder might say, I don't want to agree to that, and then you have to make the decision as to whether or not you actually want to go into business with that particular builder, whether you want to remove that clause from the contract, or whether you say, look, these are my terms. If you don't want to agree to it, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to supply to you. That's more of a commercial decision to make than a legal decision.
And that's a question I was going to ask is, when you're maybe not as experienced in business and you're going into be a supplier, say, for a much larger organisation who's been around a while and they have their terms and conditions, what position and how would you approach it if there were conditions in there that you didn't want to work with, but you wanted to negotiate it because you wanted to, get the work, but you didn't want to have to bend over, for example? That's where you would step in and assist?
Yeah, we step in and we assist. You don't ask for everything, including the kitchen sink, but you're asking for just those particular amendments of the contract that is going to put yourself in a better position. Some large companies, organization might say, well, these are my terms, take it or leave it. And if you're a small business, you can rely on the unfair contract terms under the ACL. But generally, if you're reasonable in what you're asking for, you should get someone a reasonable response or return, and there should be some negotiations in terms of the contract.
Yep. Terrific. And listen, one last question is probably more about how you help clients. Like, for example, you could probably get someone who might come in who's got no documentation. They've got very little contracts. They need reviewing. They've got no systems and procedures and templates in place. And you might have someone who's got a bit of something, but not everything there. So if I came to you and I had nothing in place, but I really wanted to do a lot of work in this space, just share with the guys who are on the calls how you would potentially work with clients to get them prepared to manage the risks moving forward.
Yeah, sure. So sit down with them with an initial consult. I'd ask them a series of questions of, whether you're a resi builder or a commercial builder, the type of works you carry out, the average quantum of each contract that you're dealing with, the type of parties you're dealing with. Just because you don't have any of it now doesn't mean that we can formulate a pack in place. We offer packs for standard contracts, EOT claims, variation forms, all the right forms that you need. We offer them as a pack through, for your precedents to set yourself up as your first step into be able to then move forward and amend your contract or amend your forms as and when required. So it generally would be a sit-down conversation just to get a better understanding of the business and then formulate the right pack to suit that business.
Yep, perfect. Perfect. Well, listen, for everybody who's on the call tonight, we've got the opportunity to have a complimentary review of your contracts or your legal situation. I'm just going to pop a poll out right now, and you just need to tick yes and no or maybe if you'd like someone from RCR to just be in touch with you to arrange that. So I'm just going to put that up for a very short period of time. Oops. Trust that everybody can see that. And just tick a yes or a no or unsure. I'll just keep it up there for another sort of 10 seconds. Or unsure is maybe. I'll I've got there yes, no, or maybe it should be yes, no, or unsure. All right, 3, 2, and 1. Beautiful. So really, this brings to conclusion. The end of the session with Paul. Thank you, Paul, for being partnering with Protrade United to assist us in spreading the word and ensuring that the professionalism of the trade and construction industry continues to grow and evolve, and associating and aligning ourselves with people and organisations like yours. We feel blessed to have you part of the team. So,
Thank you, John. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, I was going to say for anyone who may want to ask a question, feel free to email me directly if you have any questions at all, or even give me a call on a specific situation. I'm always open to assisting Protrade's clients and members of the team.
Terrific stuff. Well, listen, thanks everybody for being on the call. Congratulations for wanting to grow and evolve your own knowledge of protecting yourself and looking after the hard work that you're doing. Please take up Paul's offer at any stage to connect with him and his team. In any situation, you're better off getting too much guidance and support than not enough. So thanks everybody for being on there. Thanks for partnering with Protrade and helping us in your journey, and we look forward to connecting with you soon.
Okay, thank you.